Hello. This podcast is not for children, and that's because it's a podcast where four people get together and try to astound and amaze each other with facts about the world, enough that someone else on the podcast will say, Holy fucking science. Welcome. Today we're talking about music, and I feel like we have a really good lineup for today's podcast. So on the yellow couch today, we have Adrienne. Hi.
Hello.
What do you do?
I work for VidCon.
And what do you do musically?
For music, I got a degree in music in college as a flute major, and I still play in pit orchestras every now and then for musical theater.
Cool. Sweet. And then also on the yellow couch, we have Darko.
Great to be here, guys. It's fantastic.
And what do you do?
I am the music director and conductor of the Missoula Symphony and the Tallahassee Symphony.
Oh, and the Tallahassee Symphony.
Yes.
Okay.
Two geographically
Nice.
opposite
Yeah.
orchestras. Makes for fun travel between concerts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. And on the purple couch.
Yeah.
How's it going, Tuna?
It's going pretty good. How about you, Stefan?
I'm doing okay, you know.
Good.
What is you work on SciShow.
Yep.
What's your musical background?
I don't know. I've just been playing music for like 10 years.
You have a band?
Yeah. It's called Soviet Fourth Grader, and it's just really weird punk music.
Okay.
Love it.
Yeah.
What do you play?
Drums, guitar, bass,
Everything.
keys. Yeah.
A little
It's
bit
a
of
little bit of everything, but like I don't excel at pretty much anything. Except recording and mixing, hopefully. Like I'm getting there on that one.
Cool. And I'm Stefan. I'm a producer for SciShow, and I have been amateurly making music since high school, and I also, like Tuna, play a little bit of several instruments, but nothing super well.
I'm like the one solo instrument person here.
But it works because you're probably way better at that
yes.
one instrument than I am
Exactly.
at like all of mine combined. Yeah.
Cool. So to decide who goes first, I was trying to figure out I came up with a few different ones, but I think we'll go by who has had at any point the most CDs and or records.
This guy.
I think I don't have that many anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone digital, but in college I collected CDs pretty just a lot of them. I guess I don't know. I had a couple hundred CDs at some point. That was my peak, I think.
It's impressive.
I was a child of the Napster era, so like I've got a digital library that's pretty extensive, but I've got like, I don't know, not very many CDs and like about the same amount of vinyls. So
less than 200.
Significantly less. Yeah.
Okay.
I went completely digital, so I have about 50 LPs for nostalgia's sake.
Okay.
Yeah, but no more CDs.
Cool.
I only have CDs. Every Christmas and birthday, my grandma would give me a CD actually for a present. So I have all of them still. And a couple others thrown in, so maybe around like 150 still.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but only CDs. Never got a vinyl. I don't know why.
Mixtape?
Actually, no, I do have cassettes still. Yes. Oh, shit. Okay. All right, the number just went up. So probably close to 200 now total between the
I think
cassette.
we need to have a coin toss.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't believe I have cassette tapes still. I forgot about that.
Okay. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
I could go first.
Yeah,
So
this is my first time. Go easy
it'll
on
be
me.
me, Adrienne, Darko, and then Tuna, I think, right?
Yeah,
okay.
So,
Cool. I think it's fair to say that music is quite stimulating for our brains. But the thing that I was looking into was sort of like, how do you tailor music to maximize that stimulation? Like sort of get the most out of music. And so if you look at services like Spotify or Pandora, like they're sort of trying to do that by like looking at your behavior, like did you like this song? Did you spend a lot of time listening to it? How many times did you listen to it? And comparing that across many users to like make predictions about what it thinks you will like. But it's obviously not tied into your brain. It's just guessing, although those guesses are often pretty good. But at Osaka University in Japan, they made a device that combines a pair of headphones with brain reading setup. And so, and it's actually part of the artificial intelligence is a music generation network. So it generates music, reads your brain waves, and then uses that data to change how it generates the music to try to better stimulate your brain.
That's
It's like oral cocaine.
Yes. It's
Scary,
awesome.
and also at the
so
same
cool.
time.
Because I've heard of like neural networks that generate music before, where you like throw it like, here's 1,000, 10,000 pieces of classical music, and then it can kind of like learn sort of how to make classical music. But even then, like you have to be very specific about the parameters and like the characteristics of the music that you're trying to get out of it. But if you like just linking in that one piece of feedback seems like it can like really change how it actually makes me think of there's a YouTube video about a neural network learning to play Super Mario.
Oh yeah,
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
It's like, because at first it just does random things. It doesn't know what the buttons do. So it like goes left, it goes right, it jumps, it just does a lot of them. It just stands there for a few minutes. But then if you tie in just the reward of like, how far did you make it in the level? Like that's your score. And so if it moves right, then it gets a little bit higher score. And so the network's like, yeah, let's go that way. So then it like starts to move right more. And it just very quickly like learns this really interesting technique for maximizing the score, and like applying that to music is.
So but in this case, you're just talking patterns of actually performing in a game.
Yes.
Whereas musically speaking, the brain is kind
different.
of crazy.
It's different, yeah.
So the stimulation is, I always think of music, at least like, we have to talk Western music, because I assume that's what they're basing their research on. It's not like Persian scales or Arabic
I think so.
music. Right, okay. So within that context, basically, there's only several ways we can stimulate emotionally. And one basic element is we present something and then that changes, whatever that is. It can be a rhythm, it can be a harmony, it can be a melody, it can even be silence. So that's kind of on a small scale. You create an expectation and then you either fulfill it or deny it. And I'd be very curious to actually hear this research, what the program is doing to do that. What I'm curious about is like, at least in my personal, experience being a musician, being involved with classical music, and, here we're talking about pieces which are sometimes 45 minutes, 90 minutes long.
Right.
One piece I'm thinking of, like a musician's favorite is Mahler's Second Symphony. It's 90 minutes long. It's setting you up for 85 minutes for the giant climax. And when it comes, it's earth-shattering.
Yeah.
So I'm going to challenge Mahler versus neural network.
Right?
I'd love to see this. I would absolutely love, because the question of human attention span is important in the equation. Instant stimulus can be achieved fairly quickly. I mean, when we go to a club and we dance, you have kind of one pattern which is repeating over and over, like for 8, 16, 64 bars, and then like it stops and the synth goes and everybody's like, yeah,
drop that
right?
bass.
Because it changed. And so you have easy emotional stimulus. But I'd be curious, like how does it actually sound? What is it doing?
Yeah, unfortunately I couldn't find like an example of the thing, the actual music that they were piping in. But that's something I was thinking about too, is like, because you do have this sort of like in many arcs that increase in intensity, and like you said, after 95 minutes or 85 minutes, then you have the biggest one. And like, I don't know a lot about machine learning, but because it's all dealing with numbers, and so on the learning side, it's like you're trying to the numbers are moving towards like the most efficient, best number that it could be using for that calculation. But because of the calculations it's using, it sometimes. Hopefully this is making some sense, but like if it is like finding that valley, there might be like a deeper valley somewhere else.
Right.
But there's a hill in between, but because it's always looking for the downward slope, it's not going to climb that hill to the other valley, if that makes sense. So I'm just if it's chasing like a single peak,
right?
Like, is it going to be able to then understand that it should relax and then come back with something a little different.
Right.
And like to stimulate an even greater
Right.
peak.
Well, and I wonder too, like how the brain, because it's just like looking at brain waves for like the stimulation levels. Like, how does that exactly correlate to like what you're feeling during that? Like, I don't know if
The
like,
little I know on the research, this was
Yeah.
done about 15 years ago. There was a neuroscientist in California who basically found that the way we respond to music is the same kind of how we respond to wine, chocolate, and sex. Now, I'm not
Okay,
a neuroscientist. I don't know if you guys have more experience. It's a region in the brain where we feel like these really intense feelings, and music can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So basically, like I said, oral cocaine.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
disturbing in a good way.
Well, it's, I mean, I guess potentially if there's like sort of, I don't know if Wall-E is the right comparison, but like just sort of, maybe The Matrix is a better comparison where you're like plugged in and it's giving you all this stimulus and like, oh, this is all I need.
Right.
Like, but they were talking about like the potential uses in healthcare where like maybe stimulating people's brains who are experiencing depression or just have other kinds of mood disorders, or even just motivating people to go to the gym or something like that by putting them in a better mood, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you can map like your brain waves, you're going to know it's going to stimulate you and
Yeah.
hopefully have that correlation with your emotions. So yeah, there's people absolutely that listen to specific music to motivate them to go to the gym.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What I'd be curious to see is, so this is individually tailored then,
Yes,
right?
that's my understanding.
So I'd be curious to see across different people, like across different cultures, across different age groups. Are there patterns which exist between them? Must be fascinating to look at this data.
Yeah. I couldn't actually get into like all the details of the paper. It was just like sort of a summary of it and the people talking about it. So I want to find that stuff out too. But
do they also make a difference between, because you're saying stimulation is how they present it. Is there a difference in that between like positive and negative? Because like I can listen to music I love and get that wine chocolate feeling. But then like I watch a YouTube video where some dude's just playing blast beats on the drum and it's just like I hate it. And so it's like I feel still stimulated, but in like a negative way.
that's the one that makes you want to go to the gym, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Get me out of here.
Let me go.
I mean, it's been a long time since I've taken like a psychology class, but it's going to light up different parts of your brain, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're
Okay.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of assuming that they know the regions that they're looking for the sort of the positive associations.
Yeah.
I still wonder, like, can they design like the worst music ever too? Like
Oh,
they're
I'm
looking
I
for
can do that
the
for
other
you.
Oh, yeah.
Darko's gotcha.
Let me just put on a Nickelback CD.
Yeah.
And
Oh no. Oh no.
But this is a secondary question to in terms of stimulation. That's like your own personal history with genres of music and with specific pieces. My experience in talking to people of any generation, if you talk to like what's on their phone, what music is on the phone that really like moves them, that like is at their core, tendencies, this is not scientifically backed up at all, this is just my own observation, is it tends to be music which was introduced to them in their teen years. As they're passing through puberty, as they're having first experiences of huge emotional charge, the pieces that bring them to those hopefully positive memories are ones that are most intense, the ones that, like,
Yeah.
when you want to feel the greatest, whatever it is, energy, emotion, elation, nostalgia, those are the works that people tend to go back to. And generationally, I noticed myself, I used to listen and was far more moved by pop music when I was a teenager than I am now. I'm like, it's kind of changed. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think we did a SciShow about this, and I think it found that was the case, that like people identified most strongly with the music that was popular when they were growing up. But I forget if they like had more like reasoning behind that or had discovered other things, or if they just made that connection. But that also, I guess maybe going a little bit back to what you were saying earlier about across cultures, I'm curious because I don't really know. But like you were talking about earlier, like in other cultures you have scales that it's not 12-tone, like maybe you have
Completely
25 tones or whatever. And is that something that people from those cultures are like there's sort of a nurture aspect, like people learn to like that type of.
Absolutely. I mean, the only reason why we are mired in Western diatonic / 12-tone music is because we're surrounded by it from day one. And this is a function of technology, not a function of even society so much. So if you look at people being raised, let's say, 200 years ago, what are your expositions to music? You sing it in the field, you sing it in the house, you sing it in your place of worship. And only then do we really get to the element of music as entertainment. You know, the music functionally has much like closer roots to us being human than just pure entertainment. That's kind of a big change. So if you're a group of people you're growing up with, and let's, imagine you live between two rivers, you're not meeting the other tribe. Like if we're now in Missoula, if we couldn't cross the river 200 years ago so easily, especially this time of year,
Sure.
It wasn't taken for granted. So we'd have our own music, they'd have their own music on the other side, on the south side of town. And so that milieu would translate into your own specific musical language. I come from Serbia, in the Balkans, former Yugoslavia. And
Me too.
Really?
Half.
Way cool.
Former Yugoslavia.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a funny thing. If there is a great cultural separation in the Balkans between Western Europe and, let's say, Southern Europe, influence from Asia, influence from Greece, as opposed to influence from Germanic countries from Italy. Almost down the middle as you split. Predominance of major music in the West, predominance of music in minor in the East. If you listen to pop songs, Bosnia, Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro, those are kind of the strong. They tend to be in minor. They like sad pop music to our ears here in the US.
Yeah.
But it's not, because it's just kind of like, it makes sense to write it in minor because we feel more in the minor.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre.
I guess I actually have, in my own life, have sort of experienced that, in that I learned guitar in high school and played a lot of like Metallica and stuff like that. And so I played a lot in minor, but I didn't know enough about the theory to know like harmonic. So I played a lot of natural minor.
Okay.
And so now, to me, natural minor sounds more normal. Like having
closer to you.
Yes.
Right.
Like the raised seventh sounds really weird to me.
Okay.
In harmonic minor, which is weird. My music teacher was very confused about that. but like it's ingrained in me now. So I guess it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I had really.
That's
Holy
actually
fucking science.
Holy fucking
yeah.
science.
Oh, that's a great transition actually into what
Cool.
I wanted to talk to you guys
Perfect.
about. So I read a pretty interesting article about music and language acquisition. And basically, there's kind of this common misconception with a lot of people. They use the phrase that music is a universal language.
Yeah.
And this article kind of set out to basically dispute that. And the way they're going about it is approaching how we learn language as a child. And a lot of people feel like it's, two separate things. You learn a language, and then later on you can learn how to play music. You can learn how to sing. You can learn how to play an instrument. But this article is addressing how it's actually fundamentally really important when you're learning language to have that oral training where you can hear like the pitch of voices. I mean, they're basically approaching learning language as kind of a musical endeavor first. If you have a language that, isn't English, that actually relies more heavily on a tonal system to convey meaning, that's how you're listening to that first in order to learn that language. And with this article, I mean, it's basically saying you're approaching music at a young age, and we're all kind of musicians at that age with how we're listening to language. And it went further on to like dispel the myth that music is a universal language because we don't listen to music and have the same emotions. It's so subjective. Like going off of what, Darko was saying about, like the tonal system with different cultures. You have like gamelan music, which is a totally different tonal system. What is it, 5 tones, I think?
It depends which island you're on.
Yeah, so I think I learned a little bit of Balinese gamelan music in college, and I believe it was 5 different pitches. And I remember attending a pretty interesting lecture where they were discussing that some gamelan music was used, I think, for a Ford commercial, and they thought that music was super happy. And actually, to people from Bali, it was a funeral song.
Oh, bad form.
Yeah, it was completely different to them. So, the way they interpret that music is completely different than a Western culture as well.
Wow.
Which I found pretty fascinating at the time. Yeah, it was kind of like that holy shit aha moment in college. Like, people interpret music differently because you're a, sheltered Montana girl, not exposed to a lot of, world music at the time. And people's, perceptions of music is totally different among different cultures.
It sort of makes me think of, you're talking about the language thing, and like Mandarin is that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've definitely seen studies talking about how Chinese people have a higher frequency of like perfect pitch because of that, because they have to focus on pitch so much.
Wow.
And that in our, like, people who grow up learning English or a language that doesn't require that, like maybe we're pruning those connections away because we learn that it doesn't matter necessarily what pitch we're speaking with.
We did a psych episode about it, yeah. Or was it? No, it wasn't psych. It was prime. It was about perfect pitch, and talked about. I forget what that sweet spot was, but it was like
it's very young.
Yeah, it's like I think before 5 years old.
Yeah,
and I think when you're learning language, but it's like in order to have true perfect pitch, it has to be instilled because your brain is going to learn. Like, okay, knowing that this particular frequency is a C,
right,
and this one is a D is that's when you train that it's important. And like you can sort of get there later, but like the connections in your brain just aren't there like they
tend to be different. They're more based on tone color. If you acquire it later, it's based on tone color. It's based on maybe the key, how the key sounds if you hear a particular chord. But true perfect pitch, in my experience, is acquired at early age.
Yeah.
And in case of non-Mandarin speakers, I think it's exposure to the instrument where awareness comes, where your teacher says, this is an A.
Yeah.
And because your mind is a sponge,
right,
it's absorbed. Now, I don't know enough about it. This is kind of a tangent on what Adrienne brought up, but I saw a call for a study 2 years ago at University of Montana. Like, do you have perfect pitch? We're looking to see if there is a genetic marker.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
I'm suspicious of, but I'd be curious to see the results of the study.
Yeah.
Worth following up on. But coming back to your point about language, which I liked. Yes, we don't have a tonal language in English, but English itself has its own rhythms, has its own pacing, and different. This is very clear in folk music of different cultures, and I can speak to ones in Europe. I know those best. If you hear Hungarian being spoken, you'll often hear things like tara, tara, para, para, front of the beat. Csara, ide, kislány, csokoládé, szádo. It has that kind of front of beat feel.
Okay.
Italian has a sing-song feel, which feels great in triple time. Mamma mia, ma che cosa fai oggi? Dan, da, dan, da, dan. Right? Eastern European languages, I can say a couple phrases in Serbian, dobro veče, slušamo danas na podcastu. There's edginess to it, right? Russian, da, ja poнимаю. So each language has its own, not just pitch shape, but actually its rhythm. And when you look at music of the people, it reflects that linguistic pattern.
Rhythm.
Hungarian music will have tara, tara, para, para. There's, if you listen to music of Bartók, who is a great classical composer from Hungary, his music is incessantly insisting on that.
Do you think that that's tied to the language in the way that like you would naturally write rhythms that go well with the lyric?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Italian music, why are tarantellas so popular in Italy? Tan-taram, param, param, bam, bararidaram. It's longer, short, mamma mia, right? Italian language is all about long vowels that are stressed and short vowels which are unstressed. So music is reflecting that. Whereas French, mais oui, music is kind of sparkly, goes up. There's a gesture of lift in French language, which is fascinating, and it's reflected in their music, both popular and classical.
Yeah, you
Great
basically
point.
you pretty much just proved everything that was kind of in that article. But I mean, because it's basically saying that learning language and having those musical skills are happening simultaneously because, yes, you do need to learn that rhythm and the cadence when you're approaching your native tongue. as well. They kind of go hand in hand.
If you look at, actually, let's come back to English. I think Frank Sinatra is a great example of a singer with excellent English diction. If you think of a Frank song, you can always understand the words. And if you especially think of kind of, the swing, big band types of tunes that he has, that's written for English. And if you put it in another language, it sounds ridiculous. I don't know.
I want to see someone covering it in another language.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's terrible. Start spreading the news. I don't know. Proširite vesti, idem. I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible. It sounds like idiotic.
Yeah, that I mean, even like more contemporary, like I remember going the other way.
Right.
Like I listened to a lot of Rammstein in high school.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
And I remember they did a couple of English versions of their songs. And the first time I heard it, I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like,
I remember
it's just
that.
such a weird, like not pronunciation or anything, but just like the way the words fit stuff and like the cadence of it was just
doesn't
Yeah, the
work.
rhythm didn't work, huh?
One of the most
with the original
painful
language.
experiences in the opera house, personally, is listening to Mozart operas done in English. And exactly the same thing. And the worst yet is the translations which were done to English were done in the early 1900s. So it's completely archaic.
archaic.
It's like Victorian English on top of wrong cadences, wrong emphasis. You have to fit extra syllables. It was like Love Actually, wasn't it? When they do the Christmas version of the song, right? We had to fit the extra syllable in.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
right.
Yeah. Double thumbs down.
Oh, man.
It's interesting too, though, because I've never thought of it like musically, but I've definitely had that sort of realization with movies where I remember as a kid, anytime I'd see a movie with subtitles, I just assumed I was like, wow, why is everybody who's not American a really bad actor? And then I hit this point where I'm like, oh, I'm expecting them to say what they're saying with like an American emotional intonation and cadence.
Right.
And like, I'm expecting them to say their words in a way that I would say them. And it's just, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole, like the body language, everything into it. So it makes sense that translates into music too. Like,
Yeah.
probably even more so.
I mean, it seems clear that like language and music are universal, but there's just so much variation from across cultures, and that's
The
kind of what they're
interpretation's
pointing at.
not going to be the same across
Yeah.
cultures. Yeah, it's subjective, especially with the emotions that go into it too.
We gotta hook these people up, a bunch of different people from different cultures up to this.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, if they hooked them
brainwave
up to
thing.
that, I'm
Yeah.
very curious is if they all listen to the exact same song, how it's going to be different in their brains. What the interpretation is.
I'm actually more curious whether the computer can figure out how to adjust its music enough
Across
to
cultures.
please people in other
Everybody.
cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
That would be fascinating. But
Awesome.
yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Cool. We're halfway through our podcast, so we should probably do a Big Sky Brewing shout out. Tuna, do you want to do one?
Sure. Our podcast this week, much like every week, is sponsored by Big Sky Brewing Company here in Missoula, Montana. Stefan and I are drinking lovely Moose Drool Brown Ale, which I think is their most famous.
I think so.
definitely.
I think
Yeah.
so.
But I do prefer the Scapegoat, which is on the table.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I
that's a
do
great
also.
beer.
Yeah,
But I don't have a bottle opener. Oh, there is one over there. Okay.
What, the
I
eye
already
socket
opened
doesn't
it.
work?
Oh,
yeah.
I got to work on that one.
Yeah, me too.
So, I mean, for other people, Scapegoat's great, but good luck finding it. Although I know Moose Drool is in,
Drool's available.
I can never remember the number, 30-something
I think
states?
it's actually less.
Less than that?
I was on their website last week, and
Oh.
it was less than that. But
Well, now I'm
either
never
way,
gonna get to
it's
do one of these
available
again.
in many states.
Many states, yeah. You can get Moose Drool Brown Ale from
There
Big
you
Sky
go.
Brewing
Big Sky
Company.
Brewing. Thank you. Cool. Was it Darko was next?
I guess so. Now, I didn't come up with a cool brand new paper for this, but I thought, because you have such a wide listenership and probably some lay musicians among
Sure.
them, I wanted to explore the idea. Why is it so effing hard to play or sing in tune? And what are the challenges involved? And how does it come from a scientific background? How do
Yeah.
we explore that from a scientific background? So, here I have
Yeah, you've got all kinds of props.
Oh boy.
this beautiful thing. This is my son's toy piano. He's 21 months old, and he's suitably abused it, as you'll now hear. Not the most in tune instrument. You know.
I'm pretty sure I got one of those. So my band, the other bandmate is my cousin, and I got one of those for him for Christmas. And I must have gotten a bad one because I think it sounded like that right out of the box.
Well, you know, they stand up to a lot of abuse, which is good. But, you know, as you can tell, it's not exactly ideal. It doesn't sound like the Berlin Philharmonic by any stretch of the imagination. So, why is it so difficult to play in tune? First of all, we have to explore kind of how sound is formed, how instruments produce sound, and then what system we actually function. We talked already in the podcast about the difference between Western music and other music. Western music is defined by having a scale, which is based on octaves. So in other words, we have pitches that replicate. And A in the lower octave becomes an A in the higher octave by doubling the frequency. So, for example, a frequency of 220 hertz is an A natural. 440 is another A natural, an octave higher. So something like... Not
So
quite.
beautiful.
Not quite.
Let's put it under the air
close.
quotes. Yeah. So that's the first step. How instruments produce this? So you can produce notes on musical instruments by plucking a string, by blowing into a wind instrument, either through a mouthpiece, such as on a brass instrument. You can do it through reeds, like on a clarinet or a saxophone, a single reed, a double reed on an oboe. On strings, we can pluck a string, like on a guitar, or we can play it with a bow by creating friction on the bow. What's common between all these different situations is that we have basically one length, one column of air, or one string vibrating between 2 points. So, here's my other little prop. This is for the people that can watch this on online. I have a guitar here. This little guy, as you can see, has strings from the bottom to the top. There is fixed lengths between 6 different strings. And when I play an A natural here on the guitar, what's happening is that's vibrating at a frequency across the room through the air, and our ear absorbs it. We'd hear it as any natural. We mentioned that if we double that frequency, it becomes a higher tone. So I'll do that now by playing exactly half the length of the string, approximately. So now that's an octave up. I can do that also just by gently touching the halfway point of the string. Let's hear if I can get it to speak a little better. Can you hear it? That's called a harmonic. What I did, I split the strings in half. And if you can imagine a wave, we have a wavelength on the first time I plug the string, which is one, we can represent it as a simple wave. This is now twice as fast, right? The frequency is twice as fast. So the waves are happening 2 to 1. Okay, that's our octave. We have to fit 12 notes between them. How do we do that? That's the question. If we have 110 as the basis and we have 220 further up, how do we split that octave into 12 different notes? Well, the typical equation to illustrate that would be 2, because it's a 2 to 1 ratio of an octave, to the power of 1/12. So 12 notes, 1/12 indicates our distance. And what we get is a figure of about 1.05946.
Okay.
It's somewhere like 1/17 and change.
Okay.
And if you look on this guitar, on the frets of the guitar, they're of course wider at the top and narrower as you go to the bottom. But what's consistent is the change. And that change is about 1.05946 every time. So if I shorten the string here, I get a B flat. And now I do it by the same ratio, I get a B. Same ratio, I get a C, etc. As we go up the scale, the passages get narrower in order to keep the frequency equal. Unfortunately, it doesn't always sound good if you just try to replicate that. It sounds good right now by itself. This is called equal temperament. What we've done is we made all the intervals equal. However, there's acoustical considerations in playing in tune, and this is where it gets tricky. All right, we have here high-tech technology apps. Adrienne's playing an A natural, and I'm going to play an E natural now above. I guess we should do it on this side of the mic. Right. That's a fifth. Thank you, Adrienne. Good job.
There we go.
All right. That E natural is the same one as we did by the frets, right? But another way to get an E natural is instead of dividing my whole string into ratios of 2 to 1, I can divide it into a ratio of 3 to 2. And that would be approximately here. And there's that E natural now. What's actually happening now is that 3 to 2 ratio. Let's take 110 again. That's our frequency. Let's do some math. If we go 110 times 3 is
330.
divide by 2.
Oh God.
330 divided by
5.
165.
Yes.
Right. Okay. We said what? 165. 165 should be if we take 3 divided by 2. 110 times 3 divided by 2 gives us 165. However, if we do our interval progression where we take 2 to the 12th, we actually end up with a value of 164.81. And that pitch is slightly flat from where that harmonic lies. Okay? With me so far?
Yeah.
Are you following me? So that's called the Pythagorean comma. What happened? Pythagoras is the one who figured out that a fifth can be done by dividing the string into ratios. So we did 2 to 1 for an octave, 3 to 2 for a fifth. A fifth from A is E natural. Okay. If we use the math, we end up being flat. Now let's build a major chord. Very common building block of music, right? If we do it equal temperament, supposedly, that's something, what would we get? This middle note is a C sharp. Okay? Let's do our math again. So now this is 5 to 4 ratio. This may actually require a calculator.
Okay, I got
So
it right.
110 times 5 is 550. Divided by 4, Adrienne. And we get 137.5. 137.5 should be a C sharp. But our handy little app, which gives us the frequency numbers, by doing the math, gives us 138.59. First time we were off only by decimal points. Now we're off by 3 whole hertz, right? So here's the C sharp. That's the sharp one. Okay, now I'm going to play you the C sharp that actually should be played. It's more flat. It's very subtle, but it's more flat. What ends up happening, if you're in a chorus and you're trying to sing that A major chord, the ear would naturally sing flat because it would resonate. The frequencies would line up, reinforce themselves, and it would ring. It sounds in tune. Yet if we play on a guitar, if we play on a piano, if we play using a Pythagorean system, we end up being grossly sharp. Follow me so far?
Oh, yeah.
As we change these intervals, they get more and more out of tune.
Right.
So what equal temperament is a compromise between basically being in tune against the fundamental note, the original A natural, and actually getting equal distances pitch-wise across the scale. Are you with me, guys? It's kind of, it's a little bit of a dance through the rabbit hole. There's one more way to make a scale in Western music, which is actually the origin of all these problems. If we took that fifth that we just made, bum, bum. Adrienne, give me the A again. There's our A. Okay, thank you.
It just keeps going.
There's the E above that. Now give me an E. And then if I make a fifth above that, I get a B. So what I've done, I've taken 2 intervals, 2 fifths, and stacked them up. A to E, E to B. If we're in 3 to 2 ratio and it's ringing and it's in tune, I have now a B, which should be this B, right? A, B, but it's not. Because of Pythagoras and his 2 beautiful in tune fifths, this B is now flat. Third system of intonation, it's called Pythagorean intonation. And what that involves is when you actually stack 2 in tune fifths, you end up having wide steps. So this is actually flat compared to Pythagoras. It would be pa, ya, ya, ri. You end up with wide whole tones and narrow semitones. So now we have three systems. We have just system, which is when we're in tune against the original note. We have equal temperament, which is when we chopped up the scale into 12 proportional intervals. And we have Pythagoras, who stack 2 in tune fifths to make a new scale. And each three have different functions. Just sounds great when you're singing a chord that's being static. And orchestra players will automatically change their pitch to keep it in tune. They'll play that C sharp low for it to ring. If we're playing by ourselves on non-fixed instrument, not a guitar, if I'm playing on a violin or a cello, or if I'm playing a woodwind instrument, if I make wide whole tones and narrow semitones when I play a scale, it'll sound great. But if I need to compromise and actually keep tune between keys, I have to go equal. And that's what the piano does, that's what the guitar does. 3 different systems, that's why it's so difficult to actually sing or play in tune.
Well, that'll get a holy fucking sign.
Yeah, my brain just exploded.
This is the best explanation. I've heard of it before, but this is the best explanation I've had. Because
Yeah.
usually, mostly I see it in the context of like, there's guitars where they like chop up the frets for each string and have it set. And it was always just like I kind of understand it.
Guitar is the most imperfect instrument. And here's why. First of all, you have strings, which are so sensitive to changes in temperature and to air. So string itself, I put a new string on, I put a new D. It's already flat.
Yeah.
It's hopeless. It's just dancing all over the place.
Play Smoke on the Water.
Right? So strings themselves change. The frets themselves give you approximately equal temperament, but then you're also like bending pitches when you play, which creates entirely different intonation problems. And if you try to tune to play one key in tune, like let's make our guitar play, an A major chord in tune. Oh my God, that's just awful.
Well,
that's comical.
We tried.
Right?
We'll dub that in later.
Yeah. Do you hear how bad that is? It's gone. Like the middle string is gone because it's new. And if you try to fit to one key, as soon as you go to another key, it's completely gone. So if I play a piece in C major and the guitar is somewhat in tune, I try to play a piece in A major, done. Goodbye. No hope. So guitar is great because it's fairly easy to learn to play simple things and you'll sound great. You can sing with it. You learn a couple of chords. You can make music. It's a beautiful instrument. But it's very difficult to actually be in tune, right? We take the piano. Piano is very consistent, but actually it's never quite perfect. It's never quite perfect. It's always slightly off. And if you're a non-fixed instrument person playing with the piano, it's so frustrating because you're like, oh my God, I can make that note ring. And then the piano plays with you and you're like, oh, I've been foiled again. Curses.
Play the fret below and just bend it up until it's okay.
I'll give you one example. A common thing in orchestras, like a common pairing of instruments is to use something like a celeste or a glockenspiel, very, these tingly instruments, and pair it with the flute. It's a beautiful, you probably know from playing Nutcracker.
Yeah.
That's a common situation. Flutes want to play in tune, like they want to adjust the pitches to sound good.
Yeah, we're
but if you're
perfectionists
playing
like that.
against the percussion instrument, the glockenspiel, you can't. You have to like match them because they can't move.
Yeah.
So it's a rabbit hole.
So what you're saying is the non-fixed instruments are even harder than I thought they were.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Basically, there's no such thing like if you're playing an A natural on a violin, an open A string, and I say play an E above that, there's no such thing as a correct E. It all depends on the context.
Right.
If there is a C major underneath you, you have to play that E slightly flat. If you have a C sharp minor, it might be a little bit on the sharp side. If if you're playing with a piano, it will be slightly flat. So there's no such thing as one E on any non-fixed pitch instrument.
Oh man.
Yeah, which is why you really have to appreciate great musicians, great acoustic musicians, because the ear naturally does what all the science and math we just talked about, the physics we talked about, the physics of sound, The ear does it naturally
Right.
on the spot, and they can do it. It's such a beauty of humanity that
Yeah.
our ear kind of is the head of our brain. Nobody is thinking, 2 to the power 12, I need to use it.
Right.
No, it's automatic at that spot. So it's a question of practice. It's a question of being involved and just doing it on the spot. It's really a remarkable thing that humans are able to do. And remember, the way Pythagoras figured it out, he didn't figure this out and then everybody started to sing. Right? People sang since like Joe Caveman
Yeah.
beat, somebody over the head with a club. Oh, no, first tune ever,
I think I've seen Joe Caveman at this little dive bar.
So Pythagoras figured out what was already a natural phenomenon in music making that we had intrinsically in our society. And then everything else which followed was the result of change in taste. So people preferred how Pythagoras, the method of Pythagorean tuning was used up until about the 16th century. We were more focused on making music with lines, with scales, and so that sounded good. Then the organ and the piano came into being, and we said, well, maybe, these chords could sound a little better. We're singing more in harmony. We're singing major chords and minor chords. How will they fit? People tried to build organs that would have this just intonation. You can hear some in old churches in Europe. As soon as they go out of C major, it's atrocious. They go to a different key. Like, it's gross. It's terrible. And that's why Bach came about. So what Bach did, Bach wrote an entire piece to celebrate equal temperament on the keyboard. It's called the Well-Tempered Clavier. Just for the record, there's no bad-tempered clavier. Okay? The Well-Tempered Clavier was an emphasis by Bach to create a showcase for this new system of tuning. So he wrote a book of 24 pieces, one each in a major key and a minor key. I can do a little bit. Sorry, it's really difficult to You heard that tune before, I hope?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Maybe too many times. Right. It sounds so good on my toy piano, man.
Oh.
And the tone quality is just so refined.
Can that be the outro theme for whoever's editing?
Right.
It's like just play
Nice.
that over there.
Yeah.
On cello or
So
something.
he wrote this 24 different pieces per book to showcase the fact that all keys could sound good.
Yeah.
And now we have to deal with all three.
Yes. Damn. I don't know if I have anything to add. That was a
Yeah.
great demonstration.
Yeah.
It's so much more in depth than my old conductors who just basically said, "Oh, you're this part of the chord. You should, lower
do
it.
this."
Little." But God, when you finally get those overtones, when it's in
And you
tune,
get it right.
oh, it's glorious. Yeah, it just rings.
You brought up the
man.
magic word now.
Overtones.
The overtone.
Yes.
Yes.
Quick side.
Yes.
Can we take a quick
Yeah,
side?
you got to
Sure.
talk about overtones.
Because this is really powerful. So overtones are when Adrienne plucks the string on the guitar, any string. That's almost an E. That almost E. When we hear that pitch, we don't just hear the E. We actually hear very faintly an E an octave above, a B natural above that, an E above that, a G sharp above that, a B, etc.
Yeah.
That's called the overtone series. As we have that standing wave, because we have fixed points in the string, we hear the frequency, the base frequency of the resonance, but we also hear these ratios, the 3 to 2, 4 to 3, 5 to 4, 6 to 5, etc. What's interesting is how those overtones change on different instruments is what gives us tone color. So a clarinet sounds like a clarinet because of the specific overtones that are produced above the note that the person is playing. It sounds like a clarinet sound. The flute has a completely different spectrum of overtones that make our ear realize it's a flute. And what's interesting, when the two go high and they get higher and higher in pitch, they actually start to sound alike. All woodwind instruments, if you hear them extremely high, you can't identify them anymore because they lose the perspective. The color is lost. There's nowhere to go. We can't actually hear the overtones. We get out of the range of human hearing if we go high enough.
Gotcha. So here, I do have a question then. Is it the same overtone notes just in different volume ratios? Or are they actually different notes?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Certain instruments don't have certain overtones depending on the note they play above.
Gotcha.
You can even change the spectrum on the instrument. Like if I play closer to the bridge on a string instrument, I'm producing more high overtones, which gives a more nasal and penetrating sound. If I play over the fingerboard, I'm eliminating some of them, and it gives it a warmer, more lush sound. That's very basic explanation, but kind of that's one concept.
I remember, I wish I could think of the name of it, but there was a composer, I want to say in like the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
But he did, I think, like multiple albums, like a lot of experimentation where he would take like, okay, I know what overtones a trombone has.
Right.
And he would pick, this is the root note, and like I know what overtones there are for a trombone. And he would assemble an orchestra to play all of those overtones,
Right.
so that each instrument was adding its own overtones to each overtone, and just like this.
This is a common theme in instrumentation. This is you're talking about an experimental situation in this case, but good orchestration. If we listen to orchestra pieces, what constitutes good orchestration is finding instruments. Like whatever the bass is, if a bass is playing a C, if the string bass is playing a C natural in the orchestra, and let's say what other instruments could play that note? Maybe the cello, the bassoon, the tuba. Let's leave it at that. Then what instruments play above and at what point? Let's say I want to add 3 trombones to that bass note. 3 trombones. Trombones kind of have pitches where the human voice, where the main male human voice lies. So I want to build a C major chord. I need a C, an E, and a G. If I put the trombones in low register against that, it's going to sound a little awkward and very thick. If I put the bass trombone 1 octave up from the tuba, and I put the second a 5th above that, and I put the first trombone a 6th above that, so I'm still having the same 3 notes, C, G, E in this case, it sounds a lot better because it's reinforcing the notes of the overtone series. And gives it specific color. And so, yes, that's the basis of like good sounding orchestration. And then the great composer takes that and tinkers with it. And so we'll do something different.
Yeah.
And it will produce an entirely different sound, character, warmth, or coldness, depending on how it's played, what instruments are playing. I mean, your basic orchestra has 5 string instruments, let's say 4 woodwind families, 4 brass families, and then a bunch of percussion and piano and harp. The myriad of colors you can create in an orchestra is, it's literally infinite.
Yeah.
Because I can take almost any pitch on any instrument and combine it with other instruments and other colors and other harmonies.
To create
it's incredible.
Different moods and stuff. That's amazing. That's a double holy fucking science.
Yeah, seriously.
Man, I could listen to you talk all day about that stuff.
Yeah.
We got to move on to Tuna,
Yes,
though.
please.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
You
So
got
it
your little black
sounds,
book.
I do,
Ooh.
yeah. This is where I keep my notes.
Yeah, I should have had mine out.
So I can remember everything. Yeah. So it seems like what we've commonly talked about is like how our brains process music and like how that interaction happens. But what I want to talk about is the step prior to that. We listen to music, like people will listen to this podcast on speakers of some sort, whether they're earbuds or like speakers at home. And that's relatively new. Like you touched on, Darko, when you were talking about how it used to be like music would take place in a place of worship or like singing at home or in a field.
Acoustic, fully acoustic.
Yeah. So the first time that sound was able to be reproduced, as far as I could find in my research, was 1877 with, I don't know how to pronounce Charles in French, but
Charles?
Cros. Yeah, that's
Charles?
it. Charles Cros, I think was the guy's name, but it's the paleophone. Okay. And there's been, nobody's ever found, like they found, he wrote letters about it and stuff like that to some acoustic society.
Oh, they didn't have like a working...
No, but there's never been like a working version of it found. But he's credited with having the first one. And it actually,
Very cool.
previous to that, in 1857, this other guy whose name I just would not, I didn't even write it down because I knew I couldn't pronounce it.
Was he also French?
I think so, yeah. But he managed
The
to
French
record
dude
it.
who shall not be named.
Right. Well,
We'll give him a symbol like Prince.
It was right. Well, it was the E with the little like thing over the top of it, like the
accent aigu. Accent,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But he managed to record it and not be able to play it back, and then that was actually like a cool little thing. Not enough for my whole topic, but they finally managed to like digitize what he had recorded.
Wow.
In 2008, it took for those recordings to be heard.
Wow.
No way.
Yeah.
That's an HFS.
Yeah.
Right. That's Well, if you want to hear a really hard to understand version of Claire de Lune, you can find it.
Amazing.
But speakers are so integral to how we experience music anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, live music is obviously still awesome. I love live music, but we consume so much of it through speakers. And so there's a lot of engineering that goes into making those speakers, and a lot of it has to do with like the material that you make the case of the speaker out of. And there's like people go nuts over this. I mean, there's a lot of pseudoscience around it too in some spots. Like if you look up audiophile stuff, there's like people selling like, oh, you can get like a tiny bag of rocks to tie around your speaker cord that like cleanses the...
Weird, because I was thinking like, oh, do they hang like a bulb of garlic inside the speaker or something?
Yeah.
That's like not too far off.
No, and it's like, it's crazy because it's literally just like gravel you find on the road.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, no, special acoustic properties. We'll sell it to you for $90 to like strap to... And like...
We gotta
There's
get into
so much
business.
of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's
It's-
go into side business. I think we got something there.
Right. Oh, yeah.
All right.
And
I'm gonna go to Nepal and like have the monks bless my rocks.
that
And then
people
there'll be
will pay
150.
premiums for this.
See?
Like, yeah, even in the face of like double-blind studies that are like, one guy replaced like some special magnetic or speaker wire with like a coat hanger that he had unwound and like jammed into the two ports, and like couldn't tell a difference in a double-blind study, but people still buy this stuff. So
I
yeah,
love the irrationality of human beings.
right, make bank on this. But there is some science to it. Like if you build a speaker, like everything is coming out of like your driver and your tweeters and woofers and whatever you have. And those are creating the sound, and like those have their own engineering that go into those. But then you place them in an enclosure, and a lot of times cheaper ones are made out of plastic because it works. It's easy to create a shape, especially if you're going for design over function. Plastic is easier to work with, but it's pliable. It resonates not resonates really, but it doesn't do
It's not stiff.
right.
It's malleable, let's say.
It's
or
malleable.
Elastic.
Yeah, it's got a lot of elasticity, and what you need in a speaker casing is for it to be as acoustically transparent as possible. And so what we've ended up, and you can make it, there's stuff, you can make it out of metal, but then that ends up being really resonant when you're running a speaker through it, because like, you know, it's the same material you're making a cymbal out of when a drummer hits it, so it's supposed to make noise. And you can make it out of hardwood, but then you have to deal with stuff like the grain adds like a dimensionality to its flexibility, and you can get knots that disrupt like stuff that are hard to work with. So
Temperature,
yeah,
warping.
temperature, moisture, like all sorts of different stuff goes into these materials. And so what we've basically settled on for a lot of like higher quality speakers is medium density fiberboard, which is basically just like shredded up wood fibers, and then you put it together with this resin. And they have different densities, but I think the most common, because it's in that sweet spot of like price and functionality, is medium density. And so when you go into a recording studio and you see like their nice, like, you know, $10,000 set of monitors, it's probably using medium density fiberboard.
Because it's consistent.
Yeah, it's a lot
The
more...
resonance is consistent, the vibration is consistent, it's more stable.
Right. And it's like the resonance itself, it's really good at dampening the material because it is like those little particles in that resin. But that does have some drawbacks. Like it's not completely acoustically transparent. Like usually you need to have something to separate the monitors from whatever they're sitting on, whether it's a stand or like the ones I have at home for mixing. I've got like a little stand with rubber dampers on it. Because, you know, if you're putting that energy into your desk, then it's not going into, then it's making your desk vibrate. And the big complaint I heard about them is that there's formaldehyde in the resin, like urea formaldehyde with, I think, 9% by mass or something like that, some formula.
Okay.
And it's just part of the manufacturing process. It's not a big thing. I've read some stuff about like if you're like very sensitive to formaldehyde or like you have an allergy, then they can be kind of sketchy with it. But other than that, it's like whatever. The big problem is that manufacturing those, anybody who works in that factory, there's a higher incidence of like nasal cancer in those sorts of factories.
That's not good.
Right, yeah. And it's like the dust is apparently really bad for you. Like I read comparisons to like asbestos. I don't think it's quite that bad, but it like has that same sort of get stuck in your lungs. So earlier this year, a design student in the UK from, his name's Bertie Ford, from the Nottingham Trent University, which is one of the most British universities I've ever heard of. But he managed to design speakers, a speaker casing that he created out of oyster mushrooms.
Wait, what the fuck is an oyster mushroom?
Yeah.
It's
let's
apparently
back up
it's
a
a
second.
really common, a wild mushroom, like a really commonly sought after wild mushroom for
Yeah, it's
food.
tasty.
Yeah, they're tasty. It's like I read that it smells like almonds. I've never had one myself.
So what's
but
he
like,
using? He's
Okay.
So what he does is he builds a he builds a mold, and then puts this oyster mushroom, like the mycelium is what it's actually made out of instead of the mushroom itself.
Yeah.
But he puts it in this mold with coffee grounds and straw, because apparently these mushrooms really like coffee grounds and straw. And he lets it grow into that mold over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks.
So it's like a live mushroom.
Yeah, he grows it into that. And at the end of the 2 or 3 weeks, when it's finally like it's in the shape of this casing that he wants, then he takes it out and he bakes it on a fairly low temperature for like 6 hours. And that so it turns it into mushroom jerky. It gets rid of the moisture. It like hardens it into a shell. And then he can install that. And I couldn't find any, because it's like this one design student who just did it.
Yeah.
And then I've seen like a couple of other people not doing it necessarily in a scientific context, but more of a design context. So I couldn't find any like actual properties. But he said working with it is incredibly similar to medium density fiberboard, which is why he chose speakers, because there's other people making like lamps out of it and furniture. But he was like, this...
well, it's sustainable.
Right. And that was his point, is like, oh, like this could be a sustainable alternative
toxic.
to medium density fiberboard, which is like so common, especially
Can you scale
with
it?
music. What's that?
Can you scale it?
Right. Yeah. And so it's super new. He did his presentation in June, I think.
Oh, so it's really
Yeah, that's
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
I
a-
don't think anybody has fully explored, but like that would be, and like they look really cool, because it's like, you know, when you
As
pull up
long
a
as it
log
doesn't
and
start
there's-
growing, you know, like imagine you're like in the southeast humid weather.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
it
all of a
just
sudden, like
explodes.
your speaker is like suddenly a quarter larger than it used to be,
Maybe
That
it
might
makes
be
it
a-
sound better.
right?
Well, that's what. Did he talk about the acoustic property? Like, is it more transparent than MDF?
He
or-
said it was similar to MDF.
or it's just-
yeah. So it was like
it's performance-wise, it seems like it's the same. It's just like it's primarily
Right.
the non-toxic and sustainable side of it.
yeah. Well, design wise, he said it was pretty similar.
Okay.
So I don't know. That was because like the place I first heard about it is the magazine Sound on Sound, which is
Okay.
all about recording stuff.
Sure.
And they said like, well, I mean, we haven't heard it, so we can't verify the
Yeah.
acoustic properties of it. But if it is that similar to medium density fiberboard, then who knows? And I mean, they actually look really cool. You can find pictures, and it's just like, it's this weird, you know, when you pull up a log and you see like all the tendrils everywhere, it's like that, only there's like a big circular speaker cone sticking out of it. And it's like, yeah, it's really cool.
I don't know how he like just what mushroom he was on to come up with that idea.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
man,
There's the picture of it.
oh, look
Wow.
at that.
That's kind of cool. That's
really is.
aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's
that's-
nice.
I mean,
I think you need a shaggy carpet to go with that.
Yes.
oh, that is it,
It's a
isn't
little
it?
retro.
It looks
Yeah.
very 70s. Like
Yes.
you get like one of those like orange floor lamps with like
Right?
the little
Lava
yeah.
lamp.
Yeah.
Get a
there you
lava
go.
lamp.
Yeah, it
Shag
actually-
The
carpet.
wood paneling and that
Totally
same
wood
room.
paneling.
Yeah.
Yes. Plenty of that around here in these parts.
Dude, the house I grew up in had like that faux wood
Yep.
paneling, and I was so mad when my parents got rid of it. I was pretty young, but I was like, no, this is my life. This is my childhood. And they're like, it's the 70s. It's not your childhood.
It kind of looks like MDF too.
Yeah,
Like exposed MDF.
It's super weird.
Huh. Yeah. Well, holy fucking science.
Holy fucking science.
Oh, he called it Fungasound.
Yeah.
Just the name of his
Oh, that's a
brand.
good
Yeah.
name.
All right.
I would buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fungus sound. What I want is like the speaker to be shaped like a mushroom. So that like the driver is the top round part of the mushroom. Like that's my vision.
Yeah. I think, well, I
To
mean,
start my competing company.
Oh yeah,
to
I was gonna
fungus
suggest
sound.
you like call them up, but like no, compete. Yeah,
Yeah.
Can you call it sound aside? No.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining me, everyone. This is a really cool episode of
Thanks,
Fully Fucking
Stefan.
Science.
Fun.
Yeah.
Tuna, do you want to talk about some merch?
yeah. If you go to dftba.com, the link is in the description. You can find a cool sticker with the words "Holy Fucking Science" on it and our logo.
We have a poster too.
We have a poster too.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe again, this is not a podcast for children, so like maybe don't get caught with those if you're under 18.
The police are really
Yeah.
gonna stop you.
I'm
You guys
thinking
got any
like-
Holy Fucking Science posters in the back.
I'm just saying the poster seems like it would be a good fit for the inside of a locker,
Okay.
but that is
we
probably not a
don't-
good place to put it.
We don't endorse that
Yeah.
use.
Right.
Okay. Cool. Today we've had Caitlin Hoffmeister behind the camera and behind the mixer. And I have been Stefan Chin.
I have been Tuna Metesh.
I've been Darko Butorac.
And I've been Adrienne Burtin.
And this has been Holy Fucking Science.